Welcome to My Crazy, My Rules, where the only crazy thing is my fondness for reading your letters and seeing a piece of your thoughts. I'm your host, Benn Shannon, so grab a coffee, settle in, and let's listen to this next letter together because that's what we do here. We share our crazy one story at a time. And before I go into this next episode, I do want to apologize in advance. Living here in Texas, the air quality is not what you would call the very best. And unfortunately, I am having a little bit of an issue with my sinuses because of this very clear and beautiful, crisp fall air at about 100 and some degrees and just doing wonderful. So the pollens are sitting heavy on the cars and also in my nose. And I am going to start with another thing also. Before I begin getting into today's episode, I need to tell you something. This is going to be the last audio episode I do with the name My Crazy, My Rules. And you're probably going to ask yourself why. And the answer is because my next episode is going to be done out of the brand new studio in McKinney, Texas. And it's going to be audio and video. So you're all going to see my beautiful face that I have for radio is actually going to be in front of you. So before Monday, September 29th, 2025, you want to make sure you get yourself a really good pair of sunglasses because the glare off my head may be blinding. So it is today, Monday, September 22nd, 2025, and I don't have a letter because this is going to be kind of a shorter episode because I am in the process of moving everything over to the studio, so there's not a lot here left in my home. Everything's been moved over. So I researched today. I took a look at what was the historical significance of September 22nd. And a lot of people say, well, that's the first day of fall or the fall equinox or whatever it may be. It's also the cusp. If you were born on September 22nd, you might be a Libra, you might be a Virgo, you're right on the cusp. Who knows? So I looked back and there were a great many things that did happen on this day through the years, but I did find one that was extremely interesting and I think very noteworthy. On September 22nd, 1961, at approximately 6:42 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a baby boy was born to Herbert and Bertha Shannon, and that handsome, intelligent, perfect specimen of a man to be was me. I was born 64 years ago today. And today is September 22nd, 2025. And that means I am 64 years old. And that is a lot of years. I was born on a Friday night. And if I was a car, by now, I would either be an old relic, which is kind of the way I feel anyway, or I would be rusted out in a junkyard somewhere. Hopefully, somebody would have taken the time and refurbished me, and I would be as good as new, but that hasn't happened. But one of the things, one of the things I have noticed talking with a lot of friends that I went to high school with and everything is that growing older tends to be different in different parts of our lives. When we're a child, before we hit our teens, everything is kind of very happy about our birthdays. Our parents will celebrate it with us. It's a very big thing. It's a joy because we were brought into this world and it wasn't that long ago. Maybe we're 7, 8, 9 years old, big parties, clowns, whatever it happens to be. And then we start getting into our teenage years. We go through puberty, but we start looking at the next milestone. The biggest one is, for me, it was 16 years old because I could get my driver's license. Everything up to that, I was so excited to become a teenager. When I was 12, I used to tell people I was 12-teen. I couldn't wait to be in my teen years. But so 16, I got my driver's license. 18, back when I was 18, you could drink. And so at 18 years of age, we went out to a bar. And by this time, though, I had already joined the volunteer fire department in Baltimore County, Maryland. So it wasn't like I was going out to get drunk and then drive around, but I did go to a bar and a couple of my friends bought me my first legal beer, we'll say. So that was something. And then 21 was the next big thing. 21 was, hey, that's the biggest thing. That's from there on out, it's kind of like, oh well, I guess maybe downhill, but I don't know. But 21, my 21st birthday was actually, I was in the Air Force already by that time. So as the years go on, though, as we go into our 20s and 25 years old, we're a quarter of a century old. Then we go up to 50 years old and we kind of start figuring, all right, our 40s to 50s, that's our midlife. And as we get older, as we get into our 60s and 64 for me, we start thinking about how much of our life we've lived compared to how much of our life we have left to live. And we start thinking things a little bit differently. Now, I'm not concerned as much for myself and talking to my friends. This is the same thing as we are to make sure our children and our grandchildren and maybe even our great grandchildren are taken care of after we leave. And that becomes more and more important. But also, I started looking at what exactly has changed in the years. I look back at my life and I can't help but wonder that if there is a God, and I'm not doing a religious thing here, you don't have to say, well, there is or there isn't, but if there is a God, did I fulfill my plan for what he had planned for me, or did I disappoint? And I think about that for my parents as well. Did I make my parents proud of me, or did I disappoint? And I try to think back, and one of the things I have with one of the reasons I have PTSD is because my memory is so very clear from things so long ago. And I do remember things that I know made my father proud. I remember when I became a firefighter EMT and my dad never said, I love you. And he never said, I'm proud of you, but he did things that would show you that he was. The biggest thing for me was the first time he called me and said, I need you to come over. I'm not feeling well. And that meant my father trusted me, which was a very big thing. I mean, I was in my 20s, and to have my father literally trust his life to me was a very big thing for me. So I do feel in that I made my father proud. But then I look back at my school years, and I'm not so sure. In school, I was bored silly. I graduated, but just barely. Um, I believed while I was in high school of the holy teenager trinity. And again, not religious, but this is what I called the teenager trinity. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So that's how I went through high school. But as I said, at 17 years old, a good friend of mine talked me into joining the fire department as when I was a senior in high school. And that put me on the straight and narrow, especially because one of my first duty nights on a Friday night, I was supposed to be out partying with some of my friends, but I was a new EMT. I was new in the fire department. I had to spend the weekends there to get my runs and everything in. And one of the first runs that I went on that was major was some of my friends were in a car and the driver was killed instantly in this car accident. And there's a really good chance I would have been in that car had I not been at the fire department. And from that point on, my entire life changed. I joined the Air Force. And I had to leave. I told everybody I had to leave because of my PTSD. I did a million different jobs before I had to stop work completely. I did everything from being a manager at Radio Shack, and anybody listening to this episode today that's probably under 20, 25 years of age, you need to ask your parents what a Radio Shack was. I worked selling CPR and first aid supplies and teaching people from all over the United States. I also taught at places like Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. I taught at the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C. I taught the staff of people that watched out for the vice president. I taught people that watched out for the nukes, everything else. So that was fun. I was an EMS supervisor for a private ambulance company from Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. I I was a McDonald's manager and a multi-store manager, and I even went to Hamburger University in Chicago. Yes, there is absolutely a Hamburger University in Chicago, and I went there, and I made the dean's list, and I learned quite a bit. There was actually people came from all over the world into Hamburger University in Chicago, and it was really quite an experience. And I then was a 911 dispatcher. I was a professional photographer. And then comes 2011. And from that point on, I have done absolutely nothing but sit at home. What's the word I'm looking for? Just actually, I did nothing. I let the PTSD get the best of me. And for many, many years, actually for 2.5 years, I never even left my house. And that's one of the reasons this podcast is on today, because I want to be able to share what I went through with other people going through the same the same types of things that I'm doing and that I've gone through. And I also want people to give us their stories like the ones we've read in the past that help other people realize that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. My mind tells me I'm still a young man. My body says you wish. My experiences, though, are no longer really relevant a lot to today because so much has changed in 64 years. And I look back on it now, and for the people that are younger and even my own children and my grandchildren especially, things have changed in 64 years that are unbelievable. In the 1960s, when I was born, all the TVs were black and white, and they used vacuum tubes and what they called CRT technology for the picture tube. If you had a problem with your TV set, and my dad was very hands-on, you took the back off, you pulled the tubes out, you went back to Radio Shack, again, asked your mom and dad, or you might need to ask your grandma and granddad, and you tested them all out at the machine they had there, and then you bought whichever ones you needed, went back home, plugged them in, and your picture was all better again. Computers, oh my God, computers. The IBM 704, I believe it was the computer of choice for NASA. This computer weighed tons, several tons, and it had an amazing memory of 32 gigs. No, I'm sorry, 32 megabytes of memory. And it used vacuum tubes. So here it was. It took up an entire room. It was very large, very heavy, and had less memory than your first computer. Phones were rotary dial. And again, for you younger ones, go talk to mom and dad. They'll tell you, you wouldn't be able to do one today. But they were rotary. There was two types. There was one that sat on a desk, or there was one that was up on a wall. Even in the 1960s, there were still crank phones being used, and those were ones that were up on the wall. And in order to generate the electricity needed, you actually turned the crank on the side of it. There was something called party lines, where you didn't actually have a phone number. Everybody in an area shared the same line. You got on it, and you talked. And while you were talking, there might have been 8 or 9 other people talking. And the easiest way to talk to your friends was they were already on the line, and you just talked to them. Now, as far as privacy, there wasn't any. Cameras, there was film, there was flash bulbs. Again, something people today younger persons today, have no clue about what a flash bulb was and how bright they were and how many people had bad pictures and red dots in their eyes because of these things. So these are some of the things that, to me, especially my camera, it was on, I think, my 15th or 16th birthday, and they were just now coming out with a 110 camera instead of 35 millimeter, which was rolls of film. you had this little cassette of film that you would put in the back of the camera, and it was much smaller. It was considered a compact camera, and you could take it many more places. But again, you still had to put a flash bulb on top, but they were just now coming out with flash attachments. And my father got me one of the very first flash attachments, and it was amazing. And I can still hear the sound of when it was powering up. It would take about 30 seconds to get enough power from the AA batteries it used to do a flash. But it was the coolest thing because there wasn't a flash bulb. It was attached. And then when you were done taking your pictures, you went to a little place called Photomat or something like that, or to Giant, which had their own stuff there, and you sent it away to be developed. And in a week or so, you got your pictures back, and you got to find out whether you took decent pictures or not. A lot different than today. Much, much different than today. And this is why sometimes I think I'm almost obsolete. I can't use my experiences to help somebody today. My children, as they've been growing up with new technologies, have to teach me. When I have a question, I go to my children. My children don't come to me. My children come to me with questions about life, about what does this mean? But with technology, with things today, I sat when I was in my, I guess, 8, 9, 10, that area. My dad was real heavy into heavy metal cars. He had the Dodge Super Bee. He had one of the first ones come off the line. It was yellow. It had the 383 engine in it. And everything on Sundays, we would sit down. He would show me how to take the carburetor off, how to fix it, how to clean it, how to replace the floats, whatever. And we did everything on that car. You didn't need to have a computer. You didn't need to have expensive equipment. You pulled the car apart and you put it back together again just by listening to the engine. After the Super Bee, he got the Cornet RT, which had the 440 instead of the 383. And all those years was just spent learning from my father how to tune the engine, how to change the plugs, how to adjust the gaps on the lifters, on the valves, how to do the brakes. And let me tell you something. If you've never done drum brakes, you've never done a brake job. And they were extremely tough, even from the word go, just getting the drums off. So all these things my father was able to teach me. And I taught my son and my daughters as well, because I told them before you could drive a car, you had to know how to put gas in it. You had to know how to put air in the tires. Had to know how to do an oil change and the very basics. But I couldn't sit down, and I can't sit down with anybody today because in order to work on the car, you have to have a $20,000, $30,000 computer that you hook the car up to, and it tells you which components you need to replace, and that's it. You can't just go listen to it for a minute and adjust the timing or power time it, as anybody of my age remembers doing. You have to have this computer and do everything. So I'm now, like I said before, obsolete. And as we get older and as I talk to my friends who are the same age as I am, and this is one reason I am glad for technology, because I get together with my friends from high school on Facebook. And it's amazing that I talk with people that might be states away or even countries away. And we sit there at nighttime and chit chat on the computer, which is an amazing. And what are we talking about on the computer? How obsolete we are, how we've gotten old, and now we're the next generation to pass, so to speak. And it really does open your eyes, and it makes you wonder. And as you get to this age, and it was funny, I was talking with a friend of mine tonight and joking around with her, and I was like, well, you're not as young as you used to be. And she said, yeah, but I'm not 64. Yeah. Thanks, Deb. Anyway, so it is difficult to get older. It is difficult to realize that our experiences are now just memories. It's, hey, I used to have a phone that was up on the wall. And now it's funny, the more things go around, the more they stay the same. Suddenly, somebody came up with this wonderful idea that I just cracked up about. And I believe it has started in California. And they're like, you know what? We should have a phone inside the house that we can control who calls, when they call, when it's answered. And that way the kids have to listen to us. Oh, yeah, that's the way it was through 1970s, 80s, and even into the 90s. And now suddenly they're like, wait a minute, let's go back in time and bring that forward. But even still, it doesn't work the way it used to. So my age now, like I was saying, my stuff is just a memory. And I get to share my memories. But the question is, when I talk to somebody that's younger and I share my memories, they're like, but that's not the way it is anymore. And that's the part I don't understand. How is it that being kind, being attentive, putting others before yourself, saying please and thank you, and listening to your elders and not thinking your elders are stupid because they don't know, when did all of this become obsolete? When did thanking somebody for something rather than being or feeling that it's your right to have it? When exactly did that part change? Because I'm not aware of that, but suddenly I go out and I see it everywhere. Entitlement. And some words, and it's really funny because I talk to teenagers. I have a teen daughter and her friends, and the entitlement that they have and that they expect, I could have never imagined as a child. And I'm not talking about, oh, well, if I would have said that to my dad, he would have, taken me out back with a switch, which he would have. But it's no, I deserve this because I'm a human being. I don't understand, and I'd love for somebody out there to send me in one of your letters and tell me exactly when this happened. When did the teenagers, the adolescents, become so entitled they got to make all the rules? It's something that I've been thinking about now as I've been getting older, and as I was thinking about this episode, I was like, when did it become my job to pay for your stuff? When did it become my responsibility since you didn't go out and get a job? And I'm not talking about my own family. I'm talking about, I look at people on the street and they're like, hey, do you have $5? And I'm like, no, I don't. Well, you need to get me $5 because I need five. I don't care what you need. Why don't you go get a job? Oh, there aren't any. Oh, my Lord, have mercy. There's so many jobs out there. Well, I'm not working fast food and I'm not doing this and I'm not doing, and it's like, so then you don't have money and that's on you. But I digress. Let's get back. I'm an old man, so I get to have moments like this where I kind of get lost. We won't talk about it. I've written down my address on my wrist to make sure that if somebody asks where I live, I can look at it and say, oh, there it is. My children have put GPS stuff in my car so that if I don't know where I am, they do, which I think is kind of neat. I do like the fact that if my heart flutters weird, I just send the EKG over to my son and he reads it and tells me, Dad, you're fine. Things like that are nice. Getting old isn't. But it is part of life. If you're young and listening to this and you think to yourself you're never going to get old, let me tell you something. It happens very, very quickly. So I guess my little bit of advice that I'm going to finish up this little episode of my just rambling because, hey, I'm getting ready to do new podcasts in a brand new studio. So I'm going to spend my last day here telling you all the things that I miss in life and things that I want. Oh, for my birthday. What do I want for my birthday? Since everybody out there that's listening to this episode is probably wondering what they should send me. Cash is always good. Do they still use cash? Do you all understand? Well, okay. 10 cents today is sure not what it was when I was 8 and 9 years old. I'm going to end this episode with this little story, and it's about why I do value giving everything at work. So when I was, I guess, 8 or 9 years old, one of the biggest things that would happen in our area was the circus or the little fairs would come around. And you would have things like you would have your county fair, but also the volunteer fire departments put on carnivals and things like that. And those were the biggest things. The carnivals in the summertime were the biggest attractions. And this is going to sound funny to the younger people, but my parents would give us $1 or $2 and we would go and we would have fun. Rides were 10, 15 cents. Yes, I'm that old. Yes, I rode the Ferris wheel with Jesus. Okay. I am that old. But when I wanted to make money to go to these, and my father always believed that I should be able to go, but from the time I was old enough to do something to help, which was in my 7, 8, 9 years old, he would give me jobs to do. And one of the jobs he gave me one summer when I wanted to go to a carnival was to pull the weeds in our gardens. And we had a very nice little house. It wasn't elaborate. It was a nice little house. My dad actually built it. And he would send me out to the front garden and around the trees out back, and I had a weed. And for every paper bag I filled up with weeds, I got 10 cents. So that was a lot of money. So I filled up 7 bags of weeds, and I'm like, okay, that didn't come out right. It's not the same thing as a bag of weeds you might be getting today. And yes, it was a dime bag. I understand, but that's not the kind of weeds and that's not the kind of bags. They were big paper bags that you got at the grocery store. But anyway, I think it was 7, maybe 8. I don't remember exactly. But I filled up those bags with weeds and I was excited. I was getting almost $1. And I didn't even have to work that long. Well, I ran inside and I told my dad I was done. And he goes, "You all finished? How many bags?" And I said, 7. And he goes, "Great, let's go out and take a look." And we went outside and I'm all proud and I'm standing as tall as I possibly can. And my dad goes over to the first bag and he looks at it and he counts. He goes, "Yep, you have 7 bags here." And he takes and he reaches into the first bag and he pushes all the weeds down. And it probably filled up maybe a third of the bag. So he took the next bag in line and he poured it into that one and he pushed it down and 2/3 of a bag. And he took the next one and pushed it. And now we had one full heavy bag. And he continued to do that to where it made 2 bags. 20 cents was a whole lot different than 70 or 80 cents. And I was in tears. And my dad took the time to sit down with me and he goes, "Look," he said, "Ben, of all the things I can teach you, I think this might be one of the most important things. When somebody pays you, and whether they're paying you a penny, $1, or $100, you agreed on the amount that they were going to pay you. And you must give them 100% for the money that they're paying you. And you can't try to skip things when you're doing the job or make it look like you did more than you actually did. That's part of being a mensch, a gentleman, an honest person. For, I guess it was Benjamin Franklin that said, for an honest day's pay, you do an honest day's work. And I think that's what my father was getting to me that day, is that I'm paying you, you have to give me 100%. And I'll tell you what, from that day, and no, Dad didn't give me any more money. He didn't give me anything more than the 20 cents that I had earned. But from that day forward, whenever I did something for anybody that was paying me, I made sure I gave them 100% because I already agreed on the price. If I asked somebody, hey, do you want me to cut your yard? And they would say, sure. How much are you going to charge me? And I'd say $5. And they'd be like, absolutely, go for it. Well, I didn't just cut their grass. I cut the grass, I raked it up, I swept the sidewalks from where the cutting had gone there. I trimmed along the grass, and you have to understand something. When I had my own little grass cutting business when I was in my early teens, before I was old enough to get a job, we did not have weed eaters. We didn't have gas-powered anything besides a lawnmower. If we were going to weed eat, we had these little like giant scissors that had a spring in them, and we would have to be down on our knees and cutting along the grass by hand. Sometimes you did have like an edger, but that was also by hand, and you would have to push it and it would spin around, and neither of these things were easy. But it was giving 100% for the job that I agreed to do. And people were amazed because when I told them I was cutting the grass, this is everything that I did. And people would charge a lot more for a lot less. But once I agreed on the $5, they got everything because that's what being an honest businessman and just an honest man was all about. And I pray before I do go on to whatever is beyond this lifetime that I get to see that again, and not just in my children, because that I do see that in my children, but I want to see that in a multitude of children. Thank you for listening to another episode of My Crazy, My Rules. No one's normal, and here, that's something we celebrate. If you've got a story to share, a comment to make on this week's letter, or just something you need to say, email me at letters@mycrazymyrules.com. letters@mycrazymyrules.com. It can be anonymous or not. That's your choice. And if you feel that you need help, if you feel confused and you can't figure things out for yourself and you need to talk to someone, seek help now. Please don't wait. You can contact the National Suicide Hotline by calling 988, or you can text them by sending a text to 741-741 and ask for help. You can also chat with them by emailing them at 988lifeline.org. These people are there for you. If you like today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, share the show with your friends, family, or anyone who needs to know they're not alone. I am still striving towards my first 100 followers, and I'm counting on you to help me reach that goal. So, until next time, it's my crazy, my rules. What's yours?